Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the Advisory Commission on Special Education. We want to acknowledge and appreciate everyone's flexibility as we have pivoted due to circumstances in the posting of this meeting, and thank you for joining us this morning. I will turn it over to our teammates from CDE for the roll call.
Commissioner Tostin?
Present.
Commissioner Graff? Commissioner Estes? Commissioner Hamilton? Commissioner Liu? Commissioner Lopez? Commissioner Mashad?
Present.
Commissioner Notch? Commissioner Oyakawa?
Here.
Commissioner Ruiz?
Present.
Commissioner Snipes?
Present.
Commissioner Sorter? Commissioner Topalian?
Present.
Commissioner Wilkins?
Here.
Student Commissioner Turketsall?
Here.
Thank you. And I would like to acknowledge Commissioner Liu, who was logging on shortly after her name was called, but I see her on the screen, so thank you. With that, we will transition into our flag salute. If everyone would please join me in reciting the salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, we will move into the review of the agenda. We will begin the day with item 9, a conversation among commissioners regarding the ACSE Recognition Award and Planning. At item 10, 10 o'clock, we will have an update from the California Dyslexia Initiative. At 10:45, we'll take a brief break. At 11 o'clock, we will have the report out from the State Board, the Director of State Special Schools, as well as, our liaison reports. And then item 12, we will move into the Special Ed Director's report. Item 13, general public comment. And following general public comment, we will adjourn for the day. If I could ask our teammates from CDE to please display the slide for public comment. There are 3 ways to provide public comments during the meeting. For individuals who are in the Department of Education boardroom, there's a microphone for you to stand in line and make public comment at the appropriate times. Our teammates from CDE will facilitate the public comments in the room. For those individuals who are joining online, the call-in number will be posted at the conclusion of each item and presentation. Everyone will be asked to dial in. Wishing to make public comment, you will have 1 minute. If you are affiliated with a professional organization, we ask you to state your affiliation and then begin your comments. The third manner to provide public comment is to send an email to acse@cde.ca.gov. Thank you. So, announcements and communications. I just want to again thank everyone for your flexibility. I want to acknowledge Commissioner Sorter has also joined the meeting. And so we'd like the record to reflect that and appreciate everyone's flexibility. And for members of the public, we've had a unique set of circumstances during our June meeting in terms of unexpected personal commitments as well as planned personal commitments, as this is graduation season. And a number of folks had responsibilities locally that they are trying to honor and so are joining virtually. And we chose to host the entire meeting virtually because it allows us to be more efficient with the production of the meeting and reduces the number of challenges to provide access to the public. With that, we will move into item 9, the planning for the ACSE Recognition Awards. And so by way of review, for a number of years, we have been acknowledging programs that are demonstrating evidence-based practices and best practices that have impact, positive impact for students, and were worth scaling throughout the state. The intent of the Goal Award was to provide some acknowledgement as well as a token of resources from the contribution we received from the Grazier family to highlight the work of these programs. We've had a number of programs highlighted throughout the years, most recently our partners from Orange County and the San Mateo High School District for their work with CTE programs and dual enrollment programs that demonstrate strategies that provide greater access and opportunities for students with disabilities. Now that we have expended the resources from the initial donation, we have an opportunity to reimagine what the award looks like. And that includes the branding and naming of it, as well as strategies we want to use to promote what we are learning from these bright spot programs. We have been in conversation with our partners from the State SELPA Association, who through their generosity are willing to sponsor the award going forward. And so today our conversation will kind of sketch out what our vision might be in terms of a theme, qualities we would like to uplift. And then over the summer, I'll ask the Goal Award co-chairs to continue the conversation with our partners from the SELPA Association. And in August, at our August meeting, we will take action and affirm and finalize our decisions related to our recognition award. So I want to pause there and just open up any initial questions or needs for clarification around the conversation we'd like to dive into today. Okay. So we have our 5 areas of priority and strategic goals, and I want to honor those. But then also, as I kind of alluded to yesterday, wanted to see if there was a universal goal or outcome that we wanted to uplift as, kind of the center tent pole of the recognition awards. And an analogy that I was thinking of this morning is, there are lots of foundations that are striving to, say, end world hunger throughout the world. And there are a number of strategies that are employed in service of that much larger goal of, eradicating hunger throughout our world. And so that's what our conversation I wanted to frame around today. What's the high level theme or outcome that we want to use to shape the recognition awards? And so I asked folks to maybe get your wheels spinning last night. And so I'll just open up for initial thoughts, reactions, or ideas around a high-level theme for our recognition awards. I guess I should confirm the protocol. Commissioners, I would actually use the virtual hand raise because that'll allow us to keep track of who's in the queue. I see Commissioner Ruiz, Commissioner Michaud, and then Commissioner Teichstrahl. So, Gloria.
Okay. I love what we have in place. I think that we have really chosen some phenomenal programs. I would really like to see programs that sort of like naturally integrate very early on general ed and special ed, even in like the very early pre-K stages if possible, and then kind of open it up towards when they leave school. Kind of like what we saw yesterday. We had that one program that was just, really opening it up for adults because our kiddos are only 18 until they're 18 or, once they're 18. So I think that's really awesome. I love too that ones that really focus in a certain area and they just excel there. But I would like to see it going the full spectrum.
Okay. And so I want to make sure I capture, the thoughts that you shared. So her key components: integration of general ed and special ed. And so want to promote not just inclusion, but just like the full system of public education.
At the earliest possible stages,
Okay. Early stages, early intervention, but also I heard you say that kind of set the trajectory for post K-12 as well. And so from cradle to career. Okay. Commissioner Michelle, thank you.
One of our priorities as a commission is the expanding equitable and inclusive practices for students. And I was thinking about that as a possible kind of tentpole for this award, because I think that a lot of what we want to see in programs could kind of fall under this umbrella. It would allow us to see the full pre-K through post-secondary, the whole spectrum. It would allow us to focus in on or receive award applications for a variety of different topics and areas that could fall under this. And I think that there are also some of our other priorities that could be seen under this overall umbrella of expanding equitable and inclusive practices for all students. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about over the last day.
Perfect. So just expanding equitable and inclusive practices. And I think you've touched on something in terms of how we might score or evaluate programs. If we look at our priorities or areas that are being touched that support equitable and inclusive practices, that might be something we can incorporate in the structure. So programs that are focusing on literacy, mental health, parent voice, those might all be areas that we look at in terms of our review, with equitable and inclusive practices being the high level tentpole. Saran?
I think that not only showing equitable, but actually demonstrating these equitable practices within the community, but also another umbrella that I believe that is very also important is student voices. Is this program we're highlighting, do they actually demonstrate a high impact of student involvement, student voices, family voices? So I think that should be a very big factor in recognizing schools and programs next year. Is in the rubric, there should be a part where is there high levels of equity? Is there high levels of student involvement? I think that is a very important way, and that's a good way for us to really score, but also see and compare between schools.
Absolutely, and I really appreciate what you said about equitable outcomes, and I think that's something to incorporate into our process, like asking for. I don't want to say data, because not dashboard data, but what are indicators of that equity is improving or that there are equitable outcomes and we're addressing disparities, and something for the committee to consider in shaping the application. Is there space for parent and student voice that's part of the application process, like parent testimonial or student testimonial that's included with the program description? That might be a way that we can incorporate or emphasize the importance of the voices and perspectives that we want to hear. Okay, see Commissioner Oyakawa and then Commissioner Sorter.
Thank you. I really am glad we have this opportunity to kind of stop and rethink how we're moving forward with the program. So this is a great opportunity, I think, to kind of reset and refocus. And if they're listening, I just want to thank the SILPA folks for all their support last year and going forward. They've been amazing. And lunch was great. Thank you. I had a lot. I agree with Russ. I think I like the umbrella of equitable and inclusive practices, and I think that works for all the other things that we've been talking about. So, like Saran was saying, student involvement can be one of the rubrics that we include in this overall theme. And Gloria's, cradle to career idea, all those things, parent voice, I think we can fit them all in. And I think as we work on this over the summer to finesse how the rubric is written out. I think we can work all those themes in, but I do like that overall arching theme because I think that really does say everything. So I vote for that if there is a thing to vote for. Thank you.
Commissioner Sorter.
Yeah, and on that same rubric aspect, thinking about sustainability, has it been growing? What is the growth opportunity for whatever that program looks like? And connection, are they connecting with interagencies? Are they connecting, like we said, with parent voice, student voice, that type of thing? And making sure that it's this all kind of goes under sustainability, but is it embedded and not person run? Because people leave positions or retire and move on. And so a program so kind of going back to that sustainability so that if it's a good program, no matter who's coming, it's kind of ongoing.
Great point, Commissioner Sorter. And I think in line with sustainability, I would say replicability. There are great programs, but if the program, like we received an endowment of $1 billion, which was the seed money for our program, that might not be able to be scaled or replicated. And so sustainability and replicability, and the ability to replicate the program across the state. So I got a Zoom call. A little busy. Any other thoughts or comments? Saran?
I know that we do testimonies for applications like what we did for Goal Award. This is an idea, but I don't know if it's feasible. We could do an interview with these applicants. Because I feel like, here's the thing. For me, when you have a conversation with a person that you're interviewing for a job or something, you're able to really understand like who they are and what they would bring and why they should deserve a certain award or certain this. So I feel like if we had an interview with our applicants, an interview with students and parents, we're able to actually see that, and we're able to see through their voices. Because you can write things on paper, you can say things, but you can really see it when you're talking to those people. Or like I think that moving forward with the goal, or with the people who are on the committee, we could meet together and we can interview with these individuals in these schools. I don't know if that's feasible, but I want to know what everyone's opinion on that.
No, I agree with you in terms of what we can learn through a direct conversation versus a written narrative is very different. And so being able to hear voices and see faces adds so much richness to the process. I might suggest that we start where we've been and then grow to that, because I'm thinking through the logistics and coordination and wanting to be able to adhere to all of our public meeting requirements and not having a serial meeting. And so we can certainly, I might suggest, after we have the initial details of the award and recognition solidified, think about how we might enhance it for years to come. My understanding is the SELP Association is willing to provide or to partner over multiple years. So we will have some time to see how things evolve. And with technology, it maybe becomes a possibility that we can't envision right now. Commissioner Oyakawa.
Sharon, I love that idea. The thinking is I don't think anyone has thought of that before. And having scored applications, there are often times where I have like follow-up questions that I would love to have more information about. So, but I do think, it will be logistically difficult. There might be the Begley-Keene issues. And then it is very difficult for these programs to have this extra step. So maybe that would be some, if other things allow it, it would be some other maybe optional opportunity. But I think in the meantime, as David said, maybe we can finesse our questions so that they can elicit that information ahead of time, right? Maybe we can think about like what else would we want to pull from our applicants, and because it is a lot of work for them too, and
Yeah.
you know, we recognize that. And on that note, actually, I would like to thank, having been on the goal committee for several years, to thank all the applicants who have submitted their program, shared their programs with us. We've seen so many wonderful programs out there. And then if the Grazer family is listening, we all want to thank them as well, because without them, this all would not have happened to begin with. So, anyway, those were my thoughts on that. I think that's a great idea. I like the thinking, because sometimes I think that they need more guidance. The applicants need more guidance on what to submit. And so I think that's a good way to think of it as we rephrase our questions and rubrics.
Yeah. We'll have to follow up with our partners at CDE, but maybe it's possible for us to, in the application, allow for a multimedia component. If I have a video of my program that might capture student voice or parent voice, and then we don't want to, we're not looking for professionally produced videos. But much like we saw in the presentation yesterday from Matthew, when he was talking about his excitement in the Bayshore program, snippets like that that's easy to shoot with a iPhone or Android, and have a link to include to a video in an application. So maybe that could be an initial first step, but that we'll have to work with our support team around making sure it's accessible, and also want to navigate the public records information to make sure we're not doing anything that could be troublesome for anyone. Commissioner Rico.
And actually, some applicants have already provided links to videos, so that is something. And actually, Saran, this is making me think. My older daughter is in college now, and not that long ago we were doing college applications, and this reminds me of that. Who has the opportunities, or who knows ahead of time to submit a video, right? Who would think of that? So if we list this as something you can do, it's not required, but these are some ideas that maybe they hadn't thought of, and we can share with them ways to enrich their application to give them a better opportunity to highlight what they do. I think if we kind of look at it in that way, maybe that will help us as we make our applications for those out there who want to submit.
Saran?
One last thing, I think, and also something that I've seen in a lot of applications in general for different things for programs, a lot of people do highlight their awards, previous awards, or they've highlighted publications, or certain stories they've been mentioned in the media or something like that. You could also, hypothetically, if they really want to send their application, then they could also have an optional section where they can submit previous awards they received, or previous stories, or things they've been mentioned about in the community. Because if I want to recognize someone, I want to make sure that I recognize someone for their impact and their equitable and their accessibility they have done in their community. But that's okay if they don't have those other external things. I think that was just an idea, is something that schools could also provide and programs could also provide as well. That could also help us understand, okay, it's because sometimes when I'm reading written things, I'm like, okay, I want to ask something, but I don't know how. But I feel like having additional information like this can really show impact at a higher level.
Agreed. So just scanning the internet, any last initial ideas and thoughts? So not seeing any. Who would be eligible to be recipients of the recognitions? The LEAs, so school districts, charter schools, county offices under the umbrella of LEAs. Could this include partner organizations, FECs, community-based organizations, extended learning opportunity programs. For example, so some examples, I believe it was 3 years ago, a program out of Orange County who had the combined sports program. It was a partnership with Special Olympics. So obviously school-based, but just wanting to have some clarity around, like, lots of organizations have impact. Are we restricting it to public agencies and public schools? And some of this I want to leave space for our conversation with our partners, but just wanted to get some initial reactions from the commission. Commissioner Snipes?
I feel like my immediate response to your question is like, yes, because I tend to lean towards recognizing programs that are as accessible as possible. And if we get into like the private realm, there's a possibility of like for-profit organizations being involved. And when we think of accessibility, being able to afford something is almost immediately a barrier. And so I think just keeping that in mind, even if we are opening it to more than just public entities, just keeping in mind accessibility is like one of our highest evaluation measures. Or so that's my first thought, is like keeping it to public entities and organizations that have partnerships with public entities. I think partnerships in general would be a really great a thing to add to our evaluation process.
Agreed, and thank you for that consideration. Like, yeah, so a requirement could be partnership with a public educational agency, given our scope, charge, and connection to the IDA and special education. Christine?
Yeah, I agree, Heather. I think the equity part, and I guess when we've had non-public but nonprofit entities, right, that have applied. And I think when I looked at some of those as a scorer, when I look at is this replicable, right? That's when I kind of said, probably not if they're relying on private tuition or, things like that. And so I felt like that could also be, if we do not narrow the category of eligibility, that concern can still be captured in the whole equitable, right? And even just our umbrella equitable and access. But I do want to have that as part of the conversation of at least at the rubric level, if not at the overall eligibility part of the discussion.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions on who should be eligible? No? Yeah, so now I'd like to just spend some time thinking about our current process. Currently, we begin the recruitment or request for the awards so that our October meeting or our February meeting.
I believe go ahead. February, I believe.
Yeah, it's a February meeting.
Okay, so we announce in February, make the selection in April, and acknowledge publicly at our June meeting. Is that the current cycle?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Commissioner Sorter.
Oh, well, you might be getting into this. I think in order to spread the word or get more applicants, maybe moving that time frame up or back, I should say, from February, maybe going to the October, especially if you're going to include more of the community-based extended learning. Again, just to reach more people, and people aren't always looking at emails, and just making sure it gets on all the agendas. with districts and shared at coordinating councils and county offices. I mean, that's just a recommendation.
Okay. So you're suggesting moving back to releasing the application in October, deliberation between October and February, decision at February, recognition at April.
Well, that are just increasing instead of from February to April, just be October to April.
I see what you're saying. Russell?
Was just going to clarify that part.
Okay. Good. Does that work for folks? Seeing some heads moving yes? Okay. So that we want to have a longer recruitment window and giving folks time to be responsive to the application. So in our timeline, then in August, we really need to solidify the broad strokes to have the application ready for our approval as a commission in October to release at the end of our October meeting. One consideration, we are acknowledging or making the decision in our meeting at June. The next steps, we have an opportunity to we include the recognition in our annual report, which is part of our strategic communication. So practices worth sharing in our advisement to the state, we would be able to uplift them through that channel. Also the recognition at our meeting. In the past, we've had the commissioner who is closest to the program present an award at their board meeting, and which I think is just a very nice touch, because sometimes in large systems, there's so many programs going on. It's an opportunity to highlight great work that's happening locally in an organization as well. And we want to leave space for our partners, the SELPA Association, to have a recognition at their meeting potentially as well. Because having been, Dr. Heenan can attest to this as well, and so can Commissioner Wilkins. Having been a SELPA director, the information that is shared at the SELPA Association meeting really blankets the entire state in one setting in terms of connecting with special ed leaders and disseminating information. And so as we engage in the conversation with the association, if their agenda allow, that's a space that we might also want to promote and highlight the program. And obviously there are other channels as well. Our partners at SECO, the ACSE Symposium, and I've spoken to this before, when the Teacher of the Year is selected, the National Teacher of the Year is selected, they spend a little bit of their time in the next year sharing that information. We've had presentations before us as well. And so if it's worth scaling, I mean, we would want to the greatest extent possible, promote and uplift that program over the course of the next year, I think, until the next recipients are identified. Any other ideas around how we might highlight, promote, and share the work? So it's not just, here's your certificate, thank you. It's really deepening an understanding of the possibilities across the state. Christine?
I think we talked about this before, and there might have been a logistical issue or technical issue, but we do highlight, at least on the goal award, we would have like a little blurb about the program that won. If there is maybe a way to link to something, even, I don't know, some more information that maybe the program would provide, or if they were interested, that's some way to, especially for those that, like yesterday, we heard about information that could be shared out immediately with other programs and ideas, and maybe that's one way to kind of collect the winners, highlight them, And also actually for applicants, when they're looking to see what has been the recipient in the past, it gives them an idea of what we've been looking for and the types of programs and ideas, initiatives that are, that we choose to highlight. So that was an idea.
Great idea. And it makes me think, and I just checked our website, like we have the application page, but we don't list past recipients. Which is just a great opportunity to kind of show and continue the promotion of those practices and or programs for multiple years beyond the initial recognition. So past winners include the Bayshore program, the Connections program, yada, yada, yada.
I thought we did list them, but I guess I'm wrong.
They are in there.
They're on the website?
No, they're in there.
Different page. That's the thing. You have to find it.
Okay.
But maybe more to that. Yeah.
Yeah. One of your officers needs to spend more time on our website. Thank you, Commissioner Michelle, for putting the link in the chat. The other opportunity we have is the Special Edge, the fall publication. The Special Edge might be also another place in addition, because our annual report, we are limited to space because we're covering everything that happened in the year. And so having a profile in the special ed may allow for a deeper explanation of the program as well as the potential impact the program will have or is having, and opportunities to show how it might be replicated. Commissioner Wilkins?
I'm also wondering if CDE could just put out a press release that, since we always talk about inclusion, making sure that our general education peers also realize who's winning these awards, and that would reach a larger audience.
We can look into that, Commissioner Wilkins.
I really like that idea, and so I think we can also be more intentional in reaching out to our advisory bodies. Once a winner is selected, we can also, outside of our annual report, send maybe a more intentional communication specific to the recipient. This list is getting pretty long. Thank you, our Recognition Award committee members in advance for all of the time and effort you'll be committing to this. And so as we kind of think are covering lots of ground here. I'm sorry, Christine?
Sorry, I wasn't sure. Are we renaming the award, or is that the new name? Is Recognition Award the name, or I was hoping Dawn would come up with some fabulous marketing.
Yeah, no, that is a placeholder award. Okay. Or that's a placeholder name right now. But it's tough because even in our minds, it's like the goal award is so affixed that I wanted to start the transition with that placeholder name. So Commissioner Snipes.
I was just thinking about the name, because everything has to be catchy. You got to have something catchy and short. So my thoughts are around do we call it the Impact Award, or do we have another word that can be used to spell out pieces? Do we call it the Pillars Award? I really have been trying to think of an acronym that Pillars could be. It's not working for me right now, but when I'm thinking about our goals and our mission for this particular commission, Pillars stood out to me. So thought I might share that.
Thank you. Russell?
Commissioner Hamilton and I are taking any and all suggestions for names, so please send that over if you think of any.
Yeah. And, we just want to be clear, we are kind of rough drafting and compiling a list. Remind our partners in the SELB Association are providing, they're sponsoring it. And so want to leave space to share our ideas and have a level of deference and honor their perspectives and decisions as well in terms of the award we're partnering on. So just to be transparent, we're creating a list of options that will workshop with the association as well. So in my thinking, again, couldn't think of any acronyms, but just reflecting what has resonated most with us in our most recent conversations, and as we were developing the pillars around the long-term impact that inclusive practices and belonging has on communities. And so my mind is still circling around belonging, and whether it's impact for belonging or what we hope to inspire or the world we want to see. And so that was kind of the aspirational thinking I had, not just great programs within K-12, but things that lead to making a difference in our much broader communities and in the lives of individuals with disabilities, as well as the educators. So, Saran?
So when I did thought about a name, so I know that we have a name called ACSE, which is ACSE, and I thought about individual words that could work in that. So, for example, A and then an ACSE can represent accessibility. C stands for collaboration. S stands for special, and E stands for equity. Just an idea. That was just an idea of what, because we have a name, and I was thinking of, when I think of the letters in that word, I'm thinking of words that represent us on our committee, and we do represent accessibility, collaboration, special, but also equity, and that could be spelled out, in our application for when we recognize people, but also later on for the goal award as well. Just an idea.
Thank you. Okay, so like I said, we will compile the list, or ask us, please send a list or any of your great ideas I'll ask you, Russell, to be the collector of ideas that we will continue to workshop with our partners, the SELPA Association, to see what resonates for all of us, because I know they have, the association also has, core practices, strategic outcomes, as well as a vision for the work as well. And so an opportunity to align where there's overlap, and I'm certain we'll be able to find something that works for everyone. And so just, as we are, shifting to this recognition award, being intentional around understanding our role in terms of using our platform, that's what we're bringing to the party, and how we work with others, because we also want to model the practices we are uplifting in terms of partnership, collaboration, and impact. And so this is where we're starting, and we'll solidify this in the coming months or by our August meeting to share more information and continue to hopefully build on this over time. Before we move, we still have some time left, I wanted to make space for any additional thoughts that needed to be shared, or considerations for the award committee based on past practice or experience that might be good for awareness. Okay. Seeing none, just review our timeline. After this meeting over the summer months, Commissioner Michaud and is Don co-chair with you? I know there are a number of folks involved. We'll make a connection with State SELPA to kind of work out some of the details based on our conversation today. We will, in August, plan to come back with, at minimum, like that first cover page description of the conversations over the summer, the blank award in recognizing yada, 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 and adopt that in August with the intent to work through the logistics, or spend some time at our August meeting working through the logistics of what needs to be in the application, solidifying the timeline and working with our teammates at CDE around logistics and communication, as well as the SELPA Association to leverage their network and platform as well in terms of getting the word out in recruiting programs or recruiting applicants. And at our October meeting, we'll plan to release the application for action at our April meeting and recognition at our June meeting. Since we are in the heart of June and coming fresh off of our experiences of this June meeting in terms of a number of commitments that have been made, it might be worthwhile to think about what happens at our June meeting. Is it a presentation and we maybe schedule the luncheon or recognition at a different time? And I'm just being thoughtful around, like, graduations always happen in June, and everyone is understanding, but if we really want to honor them, I want to make sure it's at a time where we are, at full strength, and it's not, it doesn't feel like, we want to make sure we highlight it with the recognition it award it deserves. So we can plan for our June meeting. If they're notified in April, attend the June meeting, and that's the luncheon if we continue with that practice, or the August meeting. So it's either ending the year with the recognition or beginning the year, our calendar year, with the recognition. Janine?
So my concern, I think that you bring up a great, question for us, but my concern would be if, like we noticed yesterday, somebody's retiring, what that looks like at the end of the school year, coming back in August, kids graduating, because I know we've had students as well. Because yesterday, I think, was the first time since COVID that we noticed that the winners were not there, like the groups were not there, and that made a difference because it's for them to celebrate them. So I'm just wondering, maybe we just, could we do it like in April, maybe moving the whole timeline, like starting in August, and then the voters get to be, and then the programs that get chosen, maybe we get to award them in April as opposed to like in June, because June is very busy for everybody. So something towards, because if we're going to shift the ledge stuff as well, the visits, then maybe perhaps that would be a good April situation in itself, would be my thought. So
I just want to make sure. So releasing the application at the end of the August meeting.
Yes.
April, making the decision at the February meeting. So we still have the long window for recruitment, essentially August through early January, maybe. I don't know wherever the cutoff date is for the decision at the February meeting for recognition at the April meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Snipes?
I was just going to say something very similar, but I do think that if we were to open it in October and give the window between October and February and announce the decision in February, that would give them plenty of time to join us in person in April. I don't know that, I think that because of the structure of school, if we opened it in August, it could get lost in that starting the school year back up and, oh my gosh, this is another thing, we forgot about it. In October, you're kind of starting to get established. That comes out and you're like, oh yeah, we've got these great things going and we've got a little time to take care of it. So I would advocate for October as the release, February as the announcement, and April as the celebration. I think that's plenty of time for folks to make plans to be here in April.
Commissioner Michaud?
I agree with that. And also, I think because this is the first year we're doing it, we're going to need 2 meeting cycles to get everything ready. Because I think we'll come to August with a proposal around kind of generally what the award is going to be, and then would need between August and the October meeting to get like resources, application documents, all that other stuff ready to go. And so I agree with the timeline that Commissioner Snipes shared.
So application released in October, we'd have to determine like when the date for them to all be received before the February meeting, announcement at the February meeting, or decision at the February meeting, recognition at April, and like leaving space conceivably June. That gives us 2 meetings to coordinate their attendance, because spring break happens in April, and I have learned in my time in education that no one's calendar ever aligns perfectly. And so between spring break and testing windows, our meeting date might have some conflicts. So June gives a backup to some degree to ensure that we're able to acknowledge them in the fiscal year they were identified. Commissioner Oyakawa?
Yes, I agree with the discussion about keeping the release date to October. There's also a long gap between the October to February meeting, so that already gives them that extra time. And yes, we need like a couple of meetings to prepare the applications. And like Heather said, it would get lost in the beginning of August. And I think you just said this, David, but I wanted to say that if April doesn't work out, at least it would, when we talk to the recipients, if April doesn't work for them, we can still do it in June. So at that point, there's a little cushion. So I think that makes sense as a timeline. Thanks.
Yeah. We can even build that into the application process. If selected, we would invite you to participate in our April and/or June meeting, so that we can coordinate that on the front end, or folks can at least maybe block days off on the off chance, they're not off chance, but on the possibility that they're selected. Okay, great conversation, everyone. I'll just do a last scan of the internet. Any closing thoughts, opinions to share? All right, seeing none, I'll close our discussion on this topic, and I will ask for the slide for public comments to be shared. And if there are any members of the public attending in person at the Department of Education boardroom, please line up at the microphone.
There are none.
Thank you. And I assume there are none in person or online.
Yes, there are none.
All right. So we will close public comment for this item at this time. Thank you, everyone, for your input. And again, want to thank the Grazier family for their years of support in furthering best practices throughout the state of California and the impact that they have made. With that, I see our next presenter is on the call. We're a few moments ahead in our agenda, which rarely happens. So we're just going to celebrate that and move forward in our agenda. And I want to, our next topic, an update from the California Dyslexia Initiative. And I want to thank Tammy for her flexibility and partnership in coordinating this presentation. She has been just a great partner in solidifying the time and being flexible with us. And so, Tammy, it's always great to see you and learn from you. I yield the internet to you.
Oh, well, hello. I'm happy to be here. And I just need to ask a little about logistics. Do I share my slides or do I just talk? Oh, there they are. All right. And so someone else is running them and I just say next slide when it's time. Is that correct? All right. I'm going to go. Well, good morning. I am Tammy Wilson, and I am a director at the Sacramento County Office of Education and also the project lead on the California Dyslexia Initiative. I'm happy to be here this morning to provide an overview of kind of 3 big buckets. I'm going to talk a little bit about recent dyslexia policy and guidance. I'm going to give you an overview of the California Dyslexia Initiative and kind of how we approached the work, and then do a brief overview of SB 114, the K2 Universal Screening for Dyslexia and Reading Difficulties. So that's kind of where we're going. Next slide. am I running this? I don't have the slides up, so I think someone else is running the slides. I don't know who's advancing them. Help.
Working.
Oh, okay. Thank you. This is new to me, a new format. I'm used to having the power to move my own slides. So it's,
Yeah, working in partnership requires flexibility sometimes. Thank you so much.
Exactly.
The team will get it squared away.
All right. Go ahead and go to slide 3, if you would. It says dyslexia policy in California at the top and has some dates on it. Okay, great. So in recent years, California has devoted quite a bit of attention and resources to the needs of students who are neurodiverse or with dyslexia, and some major milestones in the work include the passage of AB 1369, the development of the dyslexia guidelines, the formation of the UCCSU collaborative, the California Dyslexia Initiative, an update to the CTC reading standards, and most recently, the passage of legislation around screening. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about each of those things in a little bit more detail. Next slide. In AB 1369 was passed in 2015, and that was the direction to CDE to develop the California Dyslexia Guidelines. A work group was formed, and many of the leading dyslexia researchers, education and medical professionals, advocacy groups, teachers, school administrators contributed to the development of those guidelines, which really provide information on the characteristics of dyslexia, screening, assessment, and intervention, and then other dyslexia-related topics. Now, the guidelines were published in 2017, so we know that since then, a lot of research has continued to inform the field. Next slide. Another major contribution was the establishment of the UCCSU Collaborative for Neurodiversity and Learning, which was established in 2019. And this initiative really focuses on connecting leading experts in neuroscience with the K-12 education system to really strengthen and operationalize the research into the field. And they have some fabulous e-learning courses. So I do want to give a shout out to those e-learning courses and encourage everyone to check them out. And recently, there is work on a new learning management system, which will be called AREA, that will house these modules, but also many other resources. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be great. And then next slide. Finally, in 2020, the California Dyslexia Initiative was established, and that is a partnership between my county office, the Sacramento County Office of Education, and the UCSF Dyslexia Center as our IHE partner. They were selected through an interview process, much like we were selected through an interview process. So it was a little different than other initiatives where we would, in many cases, you submit and you have partners that you've already selected. In this case, it was an arranged marriage per se. So they were selected, we were selected. It's been a great partnership. We've worked very collaboratively together. And we've also worked very closely with the California Department of Education, particularly Richard Gifford, who has been an amazing partner in this work, the State Board of Education, and then CCEE has also been partners in this work. So our goals have really been around building statewide capacity, really looking at effective identification and treatment models, and then a lot of developing and delivering of professional development to inform the field. Next slide. In 2021, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing adopted updated literacy standards and teaching performance expectations. And this is really significant because the California Dyslexia guidelines are explicitly called out in these standards for teacher preparation, and the importance of teaching upcoming educators in the importance of providing inclusive environments, paying attention to our neurodiverse learners, and really thinking about the systems of support that we give students who come to us with different learning differences. Next slide. And then in July of this year, Governor Newsom signed the Education Omnibus Budget Trailer Bill, which is Senate Bill 114, which included K-2 universal screening for reading difficulties, including the risk of dyslexia. I will be going over this towards the end of my presentation, so in more detail, but I would encourage you to download the overview that is provided on our California Dyslexia Initiative webpage, as well as the full language of the bill. Next slide. In this next section, I'm going to give you an overview of how we have approached the work in the California Dyslexia Initiative, kind of what our theory of action was, some of our deliverables that you can find on our website. So next slide. As I said, we were selected through an interview process as the project lead for the California Dyslexia Initiative. We've worked really closely with the UCSF Dyslexia Center and our partners at CDE, the state board, and CCEE, as well as many other partners across the state. Please, again, visit our website. Next slide. We worked closely with the UCSF Dyslexia Center, who is working on developing an emergent digital dyslexia screening tool that they have called Multitudes. So we worked closely with them on finding schools across the state to partner with and test this tool. And it's been really a great opportunity to really think about how do we translate research into practice and build that bridge between researchers in the neurosciences and the field of education, because we quickly discovered we kind of speak different languages. So we've really developed a really nice working relationship. Next slide. We've, of course, grounded all of our work in the dyslexia guidelines and the definition of dyslexia that is in those guidelines, the notion that dyslexia is a neurodiversity and that it's neurobiological in origin, that a student with a dyslexic profile has difficulty with accurate and or fluent word recognition, that often these challenges occur at the phonological level of language, so we need to attend to the phonological level of language. And finally, that there are many secondary consequences. And that one of those is that because reading is difficult for these learners, they often get farther and farther behind in comprehension and vocabulary because they're not accessing as much rich text. So that's kind of how we've grounded our work, is in that definition. Next slide. We also really organized our work around the fundamental understanding that dyslexia exists on a continuum, that it's not like a broken bone. It's a lot more like hypertension, where it exists on a scale from mild to moderate to severe to profound. And with that in mind, this is not just a special ed focus. This is an all hands on deck focus that our entire system needs to be prepared and have the knowledge base to really provide inclusive, supportive instruction across all aspects of our system. Next slide, we very much grounded our work in a multi-tiered system of support approach. And we want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our learners, our dyslexic, neurodiverse learners across the system. So providing strong tier 1 universal support, supplemental support that's aligned and coherent, and then intensified support when it's necessary. Next slide. With all of that in mind, this whole continuum of support idea in mind, we grounded our professional learning and our messaging in the science of reading, really feeling that all educators, all folks who are working with these learners need to have a deep understanding of how do you best teach reading. Because if you don't understand how best to teach reading, it's really hard to figure out how to intensify that support for neurodiverse learners and students who have a continuum of needs. I encourage you to download the Science of Reading Defining Guide if you haven't looked at it, because it's a very easy to and very accessible tool to have really thoughtful conversations around how do we move the needle for these learners. Now, it's important to understand that the science of reading is not a philosophy. It's really a body of research that informs us around issues related to reading and writing. Next slide. Contrary to a lot of conversation that you may be hearing, a lot of buzz you may be hearing, it is not a philosophy. It's not a fad or a trend. It's not a political agenda. It is not one size fits all. It is not a program. You can't just buy, like, I'm going to buy the science of reading. That's not really how it works. And it's not a single specific component. You will hear people say that the science of reading is about phonics. The science of reading definitely gives us guidance about teaching phonics, but it also gives us guidance about teaching comprehension and teaching writing and teaching all of the things. So it is a body of knowledge, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Next slide. There's a really nice model in this defining guide that really shows us some ways to think about the constellation of needs that different learners might bring, and that will help us think about how do we best approach and provide the right level of support for each individual learner in our system. So I encourage you to check that out. It's on page 20 and 21 of the defining guide. Again, this is a really accessible tool and it's free. So when you're wanting to have conversations around the science of reading, I encourage you to check it out. Next slide. We also grounded our work in the simple view of reading, two theoretical frameworks, the simple view of reading and Scarborough's reading rope, feeling that if people understood these theoretical models, they could think more deeply about the kinds of supports they need to give their learners who are coming with learning differences. So the simple view of reading tells us that word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. And it's important to note that it is a product. So if a student is struggling with word recognition and they can't pull the words off the page, and that is 0, then even if they have very rich oral language, and so that's 1, 0 times 1, their reading comprehension is still going to be 0. Conversely, they have really strong decoding skills, but low language comprehension skills, it will decrease their reading comprehension. This is a model that we use to help educators really think about, you have to really know your learners. You have to know their needs so that you're addressing their needs at the right level. Next slide, and I think there's a bunch of clicks on that slide, but you can go ahead and click through to the Scarborough's reading rope. Keep clicking. That just shows the multiplication problems that I just described to you. All right. The other theoretical framework that we grounded our work in is Scarborough's reading rope. Really, again, the emphasis here is really having a deep understanding of reading, because wherever a learner is on the continuum of need, you really need to know what that need is. You can't provide the just right support without understanding, is the student having challenges with word recognition? Is the student having challenges with language comprehension? Where exactly does the challenge lie, and how can we best support them? So that's that model that we use. Next slide. Another way to think about this is the ladder of reading. This is a Nancy Young infographic, but it's really a great way to think about the fact that yes, it is true. For 10 to 15 or for 5% of our learners that come to us, learning to read is just effortless. They just come to school and they just read. You put a book under their pillow, they just read. And for maybe 35%, it's pretty easy with some broad instruction. But if you look at the bottom two parts of that ladder, we have up to 65% of our learners that really require code-based explicit instruction. And so this model just helps us really think about the fact that in Tier 1 core instruction, we really should be providing some really code-based explicit instruction to really get our learners off to the best start. Next slide. And another model that we are really excited about is that in 2023, the International Dyslexia Association came out with a new infographic on structured literacy, which really broadens the definition of structured literacy and talks about who should be providing it across the tiers of instruction, what is the instruction that should be provided, and then the how. It also really grounds in the why and the science of reading and bringing the evidence to bear on what we're doing to best meet the needs of students. So those are some models that we really grounded our work in. And then we provided a lot of professional learning. Next slide. So throughout the years of our project, we have had multiple cohorts of educators going through Lexia's letters programs. We've offered cohorts of AIMS Online Academy. We've offered CORE's Online Language Academy. We've offered Orton Gillingham training. We've had series of trainings for English folks around the needs of English learners. We've partnered with the Diagnostic Center North and run multiple series partnering with Daniel Silberstein on the dyslexia training series. We have 3 years of expert webinars. We've had professional learning networks. And yesterday and the day before, we just finished a conference where we had over 2,500 educators registered. And we had folks from other states. We had international. It was really kind of fun to see people from Egypt and Italy participating in our conferences. So you can access much of our professional learning on our website, but it's been great. So next slide is a link to our website. Again, I encourage you to explore those. We've also, next slide, had Spotlight Resources, where we have vetted resources around the area of dyslexia. All of those are available on the California Educators Together website, and all of our resources are available on the California Educators Together website, so that when the initiative ends, everything is still accessible to California educators on that platform, which is a repository for the state of California educators. Okay, next slide. Next, I'm going to do a really fast overview of AB, I just lost the number, the K2 screening for reading difficulty, K2 reading difficulties, including the risk of dyslexia. Next slide. And again, we do have an overview of this Senate Bill 114 on our website. So I encourage you to download that, because I'm going to do kind of a high level overview, but the details are, of course, matter a lot. So next slide. This Senate bill calls for an appointment by the State Board of Education, a panel of experts by January 31st of 2024. That did happen, and I am one of the members of the panel, so I'm excited to share that with you. By December of 2024, so this December coming up, the panel will approve a list of screening instruments. By June 30th, 2025, LEAs across California will adopt one or more of the screening instruments from the list that meets the context of their LEA. And then in the 2025-2026 school year, all LEAs will assess for risk of reading difficulties, including dyslexia. So that's the timeline. Next slide. We have a lot of work to do in the area of what do we mean by screening for risk. And so the definition as called out really matters. So really the notion here is that screening is really a brief assessment of really the most critical literacy skills so that we can think about what students might benefit from some additional support as they learn to read. It should just be considered one component of a comprehensive strategy, instructional strategy that really allows educators to deliver instruction for all students and provide intervention and early preventive support as needed. Next slide. So it is for all students, and it's really to determine risk of who needs potentially some additional assessment and also some early intervention. And I think that last bullet is the most important thing. The focus of screening is really around the instructional response. What do we do to really provide that early intervention for these learners? So next slide. Screening is not and shall not be considered an evaluation or a diagnostic tool to establish eligibility for special education. That is not the purpose of it. And as called out in SB 114, it shall not be used for any high stakes purposes. Next slide. Really can't emphasize this enough. Again, we have a lot of work to do in understanding the purposes of screening, but it's not a formal evaluation, and it is not to diagnose or determine eligibility for special education. That's not the purpose. Next slide. The bill language provides a lot of safeguards to ensure that we don't over-identify English learners. We know that California is a very diverse state, and we want to ensure that we do not run the risk of over-identifying. So I've included just a few highlights here, but again, encourage you to read the full bill if this is an area of interest to you. The assessment will be provided in the primary language of the students if a screener in that language is available. The screener tools are to be normed and validated using multicultural and multilanguage sample of students. And if English learners don't speak sufficient English to be screened, and there is not a screener in their primary language, then the LEAs really are provided guidance to create an alternative process. Because again, the goal is to not over-identify. But we also don't want students to slip through the cracks. So it's a Goldilocks situation. Next slide. It's also important to note that a student can be exempted with prior written consent of the parent or guardian if specific criteria are satisfied. And that I will encourage you to read page 4 at the bottom of our overview document so that you can see what those criterion are. But it's really around whether they have a current identification or diagnosis, if they're eligible for special ed, or if they're in the process of being assessed. But this does need to be at the request of the parents. So the written consent of the parents is necessary to exempt them from the assessment or the screen. All right, so next slide, just to wrap up, go ahead and go to the next slide. I would of course love to hear from you. And then the last slide in the slide deck has my contact information. Go ahead to the next slide, and then maybe we can just turn off the slides and I can see faces if you have questions. But I am Tammy Wilson, the project lead. I also will encourage you, Richard Gifford, the education program consultant at the Department of Education, is an amazing partner in this work and a really great resource also if you have questions. So I'll stop there and see if there are questions or comments.
Tammy, thank you so much for all the information. I know this has been an area where there have been a number of questions in the field, as well as the commission. And, you know, we heard from a program lead yesterday around students who are identified as special education, as well as English language learners. And so I'm curious, when we talk about students who don't speak or who don't have sufficient competence in English for the screener in their primary language, how will sufficiency or English the English language be determined?
Yeah, I would say that is an LEA level decision at the way I read it in SB 114. So of course I'm trying to quickly find that in the bill language, but it's on page 4 of the document that's on my website, item H. It says, taking into account the pupil's home background and evolving language abilities, including speaking, listening, reading, spelling, and writing, consistent with the California Dyslexia Guidelines. So the way I envision this is that districts, LEAs, will create a process for alternative screening that will satisfy that. It will probably be looking at LPAC levels, home language, developmental history, those kinds of things. The panel, the expert panel, will also be providing some guidance on in that area. That has been definitely a focus of conversation in the panel. So I think more will be revealed as the list comes out, when we find out what languages are available in the screeners. We don't know. The RFP was just I think posted yesterday for vendors to submit their screeners for evaluation by the panel. So I think more will be revealed.
All right. Thank you very much. Commissioner DePaulian.
Thank you. This is great information, and it's some of the work that I tap into with my school district. And I mean, it's great because we're going to be able to at least implement a lot of interventions from the universal level, right? For the tier 1, and be able to catch them early instead of by the time they hit high school, where programs usually and students have the social emotional needs at that point because they can't read and they need more supports in that sense. Coming back to what Commissioner Tostin said, I also have concerns because as a school psychologist in the field, it's very challenging to also assess a student when you don't have standardized tests for dyslexia. Recently, we just had someone who just immigrated from Armenia, and we had to give assessments, and the student was in high school in Armenia. Now, being Armenian, I knew what that looked like, and I knew what to look for in that sense, but there is no standardized tests. And I'm fluent and proficient in Armenian reading and writing, but how is that going to look like for someone? Who's going to be considered bilingual and being able to administer these tests? Because I know in districts, a lot of the staff members will be able to have the conversational, but they may not have the academic part of that. And what is that going to look like? Are they going to have some sort of requirements of who administers these tests and what that looks like? That would be my question.
It's a great question, and it's one that the panel has been discussing. And I think it's going to be an LEA level decision because every LEA is going to have to take into account their context. I know I live in Sacramento, so many of our schools have very diverse language groups. So it's not like we have primarily one language. We might have schools with 11, 12, 13 different languages. That's a different challenge than a school that has, students who are primarily Spanish speaking or primarily Russian speaking. I think it's very, like many things in California's education system, I think there's going to be a lot of those kinds of decisions that are made at the local level based on their context, their demographics, their staff, their resources. So that's not a great answer, I know, but the answer is I don't really know. I think it's going to vary quite a bit across LEAs based on their context.
Thank you so much. Your presentation is great. I've already shared links to my sister, who's a second grade teacher in the gen ed classroom, so she's pretty excited. The screening is very welcomed, I think, for all our families. And I guess I'm curious about what information we have about kind of just tracking how the success of this initiative, where we are now, and then looking into the future. So just looking at the numbers of students who are identified, how many are identified later, and then what do we see in terms of how they are doing on whether it's reading assessments or other ways of gauging success, right, for the program. Curious what the parameters are for that. And then I did also want to just jump in as well and just voice again also my concern and relief that that there is discussion and your panel of experts will be addressing the need for having norm tests for the different languages. We often have students who are fluent in ASL, for example, who like many tests are not available for those students. So not just, just in general, having, keeping that in mind for California, we definitely have so many languages, but really it makes such a difference for each of those students. And it seems impossible to, meet, have this test, normed for every language that is possible. So I'm curious as to, I saw that there was an alternative way of assessing, if not a test that's in its language. And I guess I'd like to know what happens with what the standards are for meeting that requirement of an alternative way of screening.
Yes, and it is spelled out in SB 114 under item H on page 4 of my document that basically what it says, it says if a screener is not available in at least one language in which the student is proficient, before they can be screened, their reading difficulty shall be evaluated through an analysis of, and then it gives a list of items. So that is the guidance that's in the bill. How that plays out, I think we're going to have to wait and see. And I do think the panel will provide some guidance in that regard. In terms of rollout, I think every LEA is going to be responsible for their own rollout. So we'll see how that plays out.
Hi. I just want to say thank you for this presentation. I think it's very insightful, but also very thoughtful of this work that you're doing about dyslexia. I did want to just share like a comment and something that not a lot of individuals know about. There's this organization called Bookshare. They access free, over 6 million books for free for students with disabilities, but also those for who have reading comprehension skills, and for mostly who are dyslexic, but also other factors too. And I do know that there's a lot of but a lot of agencies that actually do work on this area expertise. So I think that if we continue to build more partnerships, then more families are more inclined to having these resources. Because I think with families, in my background, but a lot with ethnic and minorities, is that they kind of have a hard time understanding what is screening to them. So the way that you explain to me what a screening is, that it's not an emphasis, that it doesn't mean that you are qualifying for this. I think that it's about the language and how we say it to our families and our students, because families and students may think oh, you're assessing me so I can have a disability. Oh, I can have a special need. That's what a lot of families will think. So I think that when we go forward, we want to make sure that we say it in a language for them, so they understand that this is what the screening is, and this is how it's going to be implemented for the needs of their students. But I just wanted to share out that is an example of a resource that not a lot of people know about, and it's called Bookshare. But also there's a lot of other organizations that do provide resources and opportunities from the state for students with disabilities, but mainly for dyslexic. But thank you.
Thank you. I am familiar with Bookshare, and I also will say on our resource repository, we've tried to share out many of the kinds of resources that you're mentioning. And you're right, there are a lot of really great resources out there. And the challenge definitely is, how do we get that information to the people that need it? I mean, California is a large state, so we just have to keep trying to spread the word.
Absolutely. So just scanning the web page for any additional comments from commissioners. All right. I'll ask for the slide for public comment to be displayed. Tammy, thank you so much again for all of the information and clarifying a number of questions I know I had through the thoroughness of your presentation, and we look forward to the rollout of the work and keeping our conversation and with you going. And we all know where to look for updates. And please feel free to reach out if there's something that should be on our radar and if we can help communicate to the field as this work progresses. Thank you so much, Tammy. All right. Members of the public wishing to make public comment in the room, we ask that you begin lining up back. And members of the public who are calling in, please begin doing so now. We'll pause for a moment.
Testing 1, 2.
Are there any public comments in the room?
No.
Perfect. We'll close public comment in the room. And any public caller or public comments calling in?
Yes, just one. Caller ending in 7407. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Speaker, you will have exactly 1 minute. Your time starts now.
Hello, this is Judy McKinley calling again. It cannot be the responsibility of the local LEAs to create multiple language assessments. This is a job for CDE that is overburdening the school districts. Bookshare is a wonderful gift for kids with dyslexia. School districts are not utilizing this wonderful resource. School districts do not share with parents the resources that are out there. Bookshare is a nationally recognized group that should be provided, that information should be provided to all parents. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we will close public comment on this item. Looking at our agenda, we have gained some time. We are roughly 15 minutes ahead in our schedule. The remaining items are our liaison reports, as well as the state director's report. Additionally, we need to have a swearing in that was on the agenda yesterday that we will facilitate, if it's okay with everyone, before the report from the State Board of Education. Does that work for everyone? All right, so with that, why don't we break now, and I will ask everyone, we will resume the meeting at 10:50. So we'll take the 15-minute break we had planned, and we'll come back at 10:50. Commissioners, I'll ask you to be here at 10:49. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to move into item 11 of our agenda. We will have an update from the State Board, a swearing in of a commissioner, and then we'll hear from the state special schools, and then transition into our report from the Director of Special Education. And so I will turn it over to you, Allison.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you virtually today and in person for those of you that were there yesterday. Again, I'm Allison Yoshimoto-Terry, the State Board of Education member, and sitting with ACSE is one of my liaison duties. And part of what I'd like to do is just do a short report on what happened at the last State Board meeting each month. And so, for example, one of the things I was going to report on before I saw the agenda was Tammy Wilson's report. So I'm glad that she got a chance to do that on her own. It was much more detailed. And the other thing I wanted to report on is that the State Board of Ed did approve an additional $1.2 billion for another 1,000 community schools in about 288 districts, local education agencies across the state. And so it was the largest allocation of funds yet under the California Community Schools Partnership Program. And so we're excited to see that grow. And again, that's about comprehensive supports for young people, right? Counseling and families, counseling, nutrition programs, extended learning, social service, healthcare, mental health, behavioral health, as well as the academic pieces. So we're thrilled to see those programs grow. And as Mr. Tustin said yesterday, that today and Friday is the State Summit on Community Schools down here in the Los Angeles area. And so I think he and I will be heading over there today after this meeting concludes. So we have approximately $600 million remaining in the Community Schools Implementation Grant for the next cohort that will be coming up in the future. So that's one of the updates. And then the other piece I just wanted to update on was the other item that yesterday's goal award reminded me of is that the state board did approve the Perkins grant to be shared with the governor's office and then eventually to the U.S. Department of Education. And that's strengthening career and technical education for students. And particularly, there are a number of grants that do that. Stronger Workforce, Golden State Pathways Program, CTIG. But the Perkins grant that came yesterday also has support in it for special populations, including students with disabilities. And so there's trainings available, statewide leadership training. And these are things that districts have to apply for these grants. But through the California Department of Education or the Chancellor's Office, the California Community Colleges partnership, there's also the Joint Special Populations Advisory Committee. And so all of the training is free, and it includes materials that have been developed nationally that address special populations. And so we're committed to growing opportunities, particularly as the governor has announced the executive order for a master plan for career education in the state of California. And that work is broad, big, and ongoing, and is really going to make a difference for our students in California. So that's the extent of my update today, and I look forward to the swearing in next. Chair Tostin.
Thank you. Before we move into the swearing in, just pausing for any commissioner questions. All right, hearing none. It is time of year, an opportunity for us to swear in a commissioner who has been reappointed. I want to acknowledge Commissioner Gloria Ruiz for her continued commitment. And I will transition back to you, Allison, for the swearing in.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to administer the oath. And so, Ms. Gloria Ruiz, if you could please raise your right hand. This goes down on history.
Unfortunate encounter with a vegetable slicer.
Oh my goodness! Ouch. Well,
still works though.
Good. I'm glad you're on your way to recovery. And please repeat after me. So I state your name.
Gloria Ruiz.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend.
That I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties upon which.
The duties upon which.
I'm about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Thank you and congratulations, and thank you for serving.
Thank you.
At the next in-person meeting, we'll have a signed and certificate for you of the oath. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And Gloria, thank you for giving visual demonstration of just one of the instances that proved as a challenge for this meeting and why we ultimately switched to the virtual meeting. Thank you for your commitment and toughness to be here with us today. With that, we will transition to the update from the state special schools. So Nancy will transition to you for introductions of the presenters.
Oh, it's my pleasure to introduce the new education counselor for the State Special Schools and States Division, Dr. Julie Rems-Smario. And she's going to be giving you a brief explanation. Hello, everyone, and thank you. Thank you, Nancy Lock-Ammon. Thank you, Leibach-Ammon. I'm so happy to be here with this team for State Special Schools and Support Division. And I want to know if I'm going to be able to show the PowerPoints. Am I going to be doing that? Will I have access to that? Or will somebody else be switching the screens? I don't know who's going to be sharing. It's me? Okay, so I need to see about the web feed. Well, we're going to try and see how that looks. Oh, thank you, Barbara Sorter. Thank you so much. Kristen, we'll try to see what happens. Okay, should we go ahead and start then? Okay, it's so nice to see you all again. And thank you so much. Okay, so it is impossible to give you a summary of all the minutes, but I will try to do as much as I can. Nancy asked me to present about my dissertation study and the importance of the deaf community culture and the wealth that is there through sign language. It's so important. You cannot have a signed language without having a deaf community wealth. Those are not separable, they are integrated. So I do want to talk about that briefly. And my framework is on the learners and their families and learning together. Because 85 to 95% of deaf children have parents that are hearing. And so it's so important for deaf professionals like Nancy and me to be able to offer our resources through sign language as well as DCW to transfer our knowledge to the hearing families and to help the deaf children in their education. I know it's a niche, but nevertheless, it takes community to raise a deaf child. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right. Now, many of you have seen the film called Inside and Out. This is it's a Pixar movie, and it's one of my favorite movies. I'll just show you a brief clip from there. If you could click on the video, please. Is it working? Are you able to click on it? Oh, too bad. Okay, well, if I were able to show that video, that shows that the first 5 years are very important for identity development and language acquisition as well. But as far as identity development, it's a very important time period. And so it shows how a child named Riley is able to develop their identity through their parents, through the community, and through friends and peers. And all of those people are very important to the first 5 years of a child's life. If we could move on, please. Next slide. Yes. So a deaf child needs the deaf community and the culture there. And it doesn't mean it's about money. It means, if you can look at the next slide, it explains what it means. It's a family capital, linguistic capital, aspirational capital, resistant capital, navigational capital, and social capital. That list of capitals added together is about family learning and child learning together. And so these are the things I identified in my study. Let's move on to the next slide. So I identified two. I talked with 3 different deaf professionals, and based on their experiences with the medical and educational systems, I added 2 more: educational capital and also trauma knowledge. And so we have been able to get through the society and the systems that are not designed for us as deaf people. People are able to do that based on our traumatic knowledge. Let's move on. So here I present my new framework and resources that I'm able to give to families. And you can see here briefly, the families learning together help you to remember the capitals. You see that the acronym here. So this is under the State Bill 210, which is the California was the first state to pass. And this is about the children's early language milestones from the ages of 0 to 5. And that is made possible because of deaf people and their trauma knowledge capital. They've brought it up to the Senate and the Assembly, and now it's been passed. Now, because of this, then we are able to provide deaf coaches, deaf mentors, and service programs to deaf children. And families with new deaf babies, we have coaches and mentors, and we can offer that language service to them, plus the DC2 services, and also make the connections between hearing families with deaf babies and the deaf communities, that as we serve as a bridge, so that the deaf children can meet deaf friends and have deaf peers. And this is called critical mass, and that is so important to have deaf peers in class as well as in social situations, because this helps them to develop a strong identity with people that are like themselves. And then they are able to then exchange the DCWs with each other. And so this is such an important part of developing their identity. And this is not just language, it's also being integrated with the deaf community, not just learning the language. So this is why Nancy and I are here at CDE are bringing our wealth of deaf cultural knowledge to the table. Now, so as far as family capital, you can see here, this is some examples. This gives us who we are, but not without the access to the deaf community. We have family dinner syndrome, which means that a deaf child sits at the table during holidays or at dinner time with their hearing family, and everybody's talking around them. They miss the whole conversation and they're left out. They don't feel a connection with their family. And as a deaf professional, I use this traumatic knowledge to inform the families. Let your deaf child bring a deaf friend, or invite another deaf family to interact with, so that they never feel like they're always alone. And so that's just one example. And we are able to provide effective teaching strategies. Like if you sit with a child and you read a book with them speaking, a deaf child doesn't do it the same exact way. You have to have eye contact while you're reading the book. And you have to look at the body language, and you might sign on the child's face. When you sign the word clown, you may sign clown on their nose. So, we have deaf-friendly community events every 2 years where we then promote love and literacy. And we've done that in 7 different communities. And at the same time, we have reading events. So we do reading across America here in California, and there are 7 cities: Sacramento, in the Bay Area, Fresno, Los Angeles, Riverside, Orange County, and San Diego. So at the same time, we host these events and we celebrate with deaf stories, with deaf storytellers. We provide free books. People come and they can watch and see how deaf adults are able to sign stories to children, and how the deaf children become enamored and involved. And this is family capital. Okay, if we can move on. Okay, so then here we have a video that shows a parent sitting with or 2 parents sitting with their child. And it's called the triangle, where the mother is signing the story. The father is also signing. And we see an example of this. If we go to the next one. I do not have time to show you that video, but you will be able to see the way the family works with the child. Like when the mother is driving and the baby is in the back, the mother will be signing through the mirror, the rearview mirror, and the mother and baby are able to turn take through the rearview mirror while the mother's driving. And this is just one example of how the child is able to learn from the family. And so we go and transfer that knowledge to the family and how to work with their children. Next, please. Yes. Linguistic capital. The important thing is eye contact and where you look. So when we look at a baby, if we look away, the baby looks to where we're looking. So we have to have that eye control. And for the babies, they need to learn that. We also do rhythm, like we sign hungry, 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 eat, eat, eat. That gives them a rhythm. And that's important to have that type of repetition so they can acquire language. It makes language development possible. And we also play with handshakes. We do handshake games. We tell stories. So we overlap the family capital with the language capital and integrate those skills. Okay, we can move on. Next slide. There we go. Okay, now sometimes for different language activities, I won't have time to show you this. You can watch this on your own time, but it is beautiful. So it's important to see all this. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Now this is important. So sign language and deaf capital is not a separate thing. It is integrated. You don't just teach sign language. You have to have the deaf community involved and have the deaf community culture capital. We need to see Black ASL. We need to be integrated in different deaf communities and include those in the deaf capital. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. Now this is a very powerful video to show about deaf Black history and take a look at the deaf Black community, because there is no Black ASL. It's actually all just signed languages. It's all in a group, but there are varieties of sign languages. They're not all the same. Okay, let's move on. Next slide. Okay, education capital. So at the beginning of my study, we tried to figure out what the best practices are, what works. We sat with a group of people, met with them. Everybody did turn taking to allow classroom management. There are a lot of skills that we understand just because of our gut knowledge. And now we want to transfer those skills to the parents to use at home. Even though they're not teachers, technically it is very important for them to know what to do. Okay? Now I'm giving you an example. We've met families with a deaf baby that's 3 months old, and the mother was sitting in the car. And then she turned the baby around, and she did not know about having to sit and face the baby to talk. And so we could see the baby jumping around, and that we knew the baby wanted to know what was going on. So we told the mother to hold on, and I turned the baby. And the baby just had such a big smile on their face. It was such a beautiful smile. It's caused me to start to cry because it wanted to watch us. But the mother didn't know that because she was still so dependent on hearing. So we showed her that to make sure that the baby could see her at all times. And that's just one example of something that is important for deaf babies. If we could move to the next slide. And we can move on, but you can look at this on your own time. This shows how deaf teachers immediately know how to adjust during COVID. They did know what to do. You can watch this on your own time to see how they were able to transfer to Zoom and virtual learning. It was amazing. Okay, if we could go next. Yeah, well, let's move on. Yeah, there we go. Now click on the first one. The I love you. Sorry, it seems the video's not going to work. Oh, that's too bad. I'm crying. Okay, well, fine. I encourage you to watch the video. And this was made by a deaf professional, including myself. I was the one who directed it, along with a deaf filmmaker, deaf author. And there was a deaf company that also did the video. So it just shows best practices. Next. Aspirational capital. Children do need to have hope and goals. They need to look to the future. And a lot of children that I know out there have never met a deaf adult. And often what happens is they think that when they get to the age of 18, they're going to die because they have no role models that are above that age. So it's important to give those connections between the deaf child and the hearing parents with the deaf adults who are successful, like deaf pilots, deaf actors, deaf lawyers, deaf professionals like Nancy and myself. There is a long list of people that they could meet. And there's we have models where, people say, oh, it's so sad, deaf children have no future, but that's negative thinking. And we want to provide the students with hopes and dreams and aspirations that they can become whatever they want to become. Okay, let's move on. Next slide. And here you see the deaf lawyer who is now working for Biden, and she's a wonderful woman from New York. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Next. Yeah, here. This is a deaf actor who's been involved in the film, The Avatar. And they were a consultant for the sign language. So they made up the water sign language in that second film. And then there was an amazing deaf actor there, deaf director. Okay, let's move on. These are just more names of deaf role models. You can go ahead and click and move on. So yeah, so these are just some of the deaf role models. Let's move on to the next slide. This is the lawyer who works for Obama, or the person who had worked for Obama. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, resistant capital. We advocate for ourselves. We need to resist oppression and autism. Autism means discrimination against deaf people because of our language, like the deaf schools, best practices. We need, through our knowledge, we know how to push back on oppression and oppressive actions. So we've developed our ability to resist and resiliency from being included in the deaf community. On our own, we would not be able to do that. But as a part of a deaf community and a larger group, we are able to do that. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Now, because of the deaf community and our resistant capital, we have all these services, the National Deaf Association of the Deaf, Deaf President Now protest, different agencies that are serving. We had a protest at Gallaudet University, and after that point, in 1988, after that, they've had deaf presidents for the university. We've had ability to work with deaf agencies and work with the deaf community. And we've been able to work with the Department of Social Services and invest in that. And the School for the Deaf in Riverside, it's been made possible because of 14 legislators that worked with the Association for the Deaf. That was in the 1950s. So, we need bilingual, we need, an approach that is bilingual for teaching deaf students, both English and sign language. And that is happening in Fremont and Riverside because deaf people have brought their knowledge, their inner knowledge to educational system. And so we've developed the language milestones. And so now in Lead K, and so this is a very important part of our program. And so this is all the things that have happened because of deaf resistant capital. This is just to name a few of the things that have happened outside of the educational system. So it's another part of that overlaps with our educational system, like the California Department of Education. And we benefit from this as providing us resources. Okay, could we go to the next slide? Navigational capital. It's as simple as being able to order at Starbucks and get coffee or a latte, to as complicated as learning how to drive or get a college education or get job training. We have to be able to navigate those systems, and the families and children benefit from watching and incorporating what the deaf community is able to show them. Okay, could we move on? Now remember, the world hasn't been designed for us. We have to know how to get around in the world until the world becomes more friendly to us. Next. Now, the movie theaters, when you put on those glasses to see the captions, I'm like, no, this doesn't work for us. So we had to have the navigational skills to know what did work for us. And so we also used our resistant capsule too. That couldn't be separated in order to get the captions on the screen. Okay, if we could go on to the next slide. So we wanted you to meet different people and how they were able to navigate to get their education or jobs or to live full lives as human beings, just like all human beings. When deaf people go, let's go back to that. When deaf people go to the movie theater, they passed a law in California now where all the movie theaters have captions. So that way we can choose any movie we want to watch without having to ask for accommodations. Next slide. Social capital, that's social networking. So networking between deaf organizations and the hearing community, deaf groups and the hearing community, it can go back and forth. So we put those two things together. And it's very beneficial for the families and for the deaf child to know how to switch from one group to another, be able to make friends and network within the both deaf and hearing communities. Deaf children deserve to have their own deaf network so that they can navigate the hearing world better. Okay, if we could move on to the next slide. And here we are. In my study, I found that we had a wealth of information. But the important thing is autism, trauma, and knowledge capital. The system of oppression has caused us to have language deprivation, struggles with identity development. Children have very weak identities. They feel alone at home. They feel alone at school. They feel like they're the only deaf person. And so autism has caused these three things to happen. So trauma knowledge as for deaf capital and wealth lets us know what not to do, what our strengths are, and not to cause more trauma for the future and for future generations. And this is what Nancy and I have to offer, and we would love to help you avoid unintentional adverse ideas. We want to help you not cause more trauma for our deaf children. And because of our trauma knowledge and capital, we understand what a totally deaf child model would look like and what the cultural wealth strategies might be to allow all deaf children to have that wealth and prevent long and short-term harm to deaf children. Next. And so in brief, we as former deaf children, as far as the IDEA, we were the first deaf children to experience the Public Law 94-142 in the IDEA and being mainstreamed. And it's a very limited environment. It's not a least restrictive environment for deaf children. It's not the LRE. It is the most restrictive environment. And so you can see here why. So there's language deprivation, lack of deaf cultural wealth, and social isolation. And so we know what this feels like, isolation. So we need you to partner with us so we can stop this happening to more deaf children in the future. Next. And so there we are. I would like to close my presentation. Instead of having a deaf child having to overcome being deaf, they should be happy being deaf. And it should be moved from overcoming to being. And moving from the medical model of deafness to the whole deaf child model. And with the total deaf cultural community wealth resources. And so thank you so much for giving me this platform to share my information about deaf cultural wealth. Thank you.
Julie, thank you so much for your presentation and all the information that you shared, and really focusing in on the assets that our students who have who are deaf and hard of hearing bring to the table as well, and some of the barriers in the world. Thank you so much. I just want to pause before we go on to the State Director's report. Any additional comments or questions from commissioners? Okay, I see Christine.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's great to see you. for those of you who don't know, well, everyone knows now my daughter is hard of hearing, but Julie has helped me since she was a baby, I think. We started attending the family weekends at the California School for Deaf in Fremont. And a lot of the programs she's describing are coming out of those schools and those programs. And our family is lucky enough to have been able to attend in person, but I'm really grateful to see that there's been a lot more outreach, especially with technology, right? That's allowing us to connect more, that now families who are not able to come in person are still able to get as many of these resources as possible, because as you said, most of us with deaf and hard of hearing kids are coming from hearing families, and we don't know, we don't know how best to raise that part of our child. And so we appreciate the help that we get. I'm actually struggling with getting a deaf mentor for my child through the school. And I'm wondering if you have, you mentioned that was one of the things you're working on. What if that is something that the special schools are doing to reach out across the state, or is this only for local schools to have to implement on their own? I would love to see something that is set up so that students from across the state can connect with technology or whatnot. So if you have any more information about that, I'd love to learn more.
Yeah, we do teach the school districts that can include the deaf coach in their IEP as one of the goals, and contract with one of the 7 sister agencies, deaf agencies throughout California, which I talked about earlier. The Sacramento agency is NorCal Services for the deaf, and they do provide deaf coaches. And there are some schools that have already established contracts with them. My granddaughter is about 5 months old. I have a deaf granddaughter, and she lives in Chico, up in Chico, California. And the school district is the Butte County School District, and they contracted with NorCal Services here in Sacramento to provide a deaf coach to go on a regular basis about every 2 weeks to work with the child and family. Does that help at all?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Sorter.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I really appreciated the reminder around the intersectionality between ASL and cultural responsiveness in terms of race, identity. Sometimes we forget about that. We just say ASL culture, right? And don't go into deeper. And so some of those slides you shared today, I just totally forgot about, right? I haven't thought about. So that was a nice reminder. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm hoping that we can give you acronyms to remember, to learn together, the LEARN, S, families, so L is E, I, aspirational, R is resistant, N is navigational, S is socialization with T for trauma awareness. I've got this acronym memorized, so it's easy for me to put it out there.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Julie. We look forward to continuing to learn from you in the future. And Nancy, thank you so much for arranging this presentation for us. With that,
Julie,
we will move.
Julie says thank you, and so she thanks the interpreters and everyone. Thank you, and bye-bye. And Nancy also says thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will move into the Special Education Director's Report.
Good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. Yes, 11:30. Everybody can hear me, I'm assuming. Just quick thumbs up for technology. Thank you. If tech could put up the slides, thank you so much. I love that one, but that's not mine. I did want to start while they're getting the slides up, thanking Julie and Nancy for the presentation. I think it's so important that we continue to remind and educate our community about the needs and the various needs and diverse needs of our deaf and hard of hearing community. So thank you for your presentation. So again, good morning, Chair Tolston, Vice Chair Graff, if you're here, commissioners, State Board Member Yoshimoto Tauri. I appreciate you always being here with us and community members. As stated by Chair Tolston, my name is Rachel Heenan, and I'm the Director of Special Education Division at CDE. I've served in this capacity for 6 months now. Can you believe it? It's almost 6 months. So I'm still relatively young in this position, but I'm truly honored every day when I wake up and know that I'm in this role. And I'm honored to see the amazing work that's happening across our state to improve outcomes with for students with disabilities. So today I'm going to just briefly give you an update on some of the work and the focus areas in our department and our division, including information on the budget as it pertains to special education. I know that there's a lot of talk about our budget and our state deficit. And then I'll briefly talk and update you on some of the current and upcoming work from our division. So if you could go to slide 2, please. So first, for many of you who know, we're waiting for the final budget to be released, to come out, and it should be any day now. We've seen a lot of legislative language changes in the May revise, and we saw a few bills that we're closely monitoring. And some of you who might know, what was included, or I should say excluded, in this budget was unfortunately our inclusive early ed expansion program, which we of course have an acronym for, IEEP, which provides $215 million to improve inclusive opportunities for our youngest learners from infant to preschool level. And it also required that 10% of the slots in early programs from birth to 5 that were funded by our state or federal government be reserved for students with disabilities. So again, there was a 10% slot that were required to fill with students with disabilities. So we ensured we had inclusive opportunities at our earliest levels. So as of right now, that is still up in the air, but we do want to thank, and I want to publicly thank our superintendents, our state SELPA association, our parents, our advocacy groups for writing amazing letters of support for continuation of this program and funding for this inclusive program. But we'll have to wait to see if funding is incorporated into the budget. So my understanding, as I'm still learning this process, is that around September, when we have, they call it a budget bill junior, is released, we'll have more understanding about the opportunity to continue to hold on to this funding for our earliest learners. Second, I know that a lot of information has gone out on this alternative pathway to a diploma, which allows our students, just as a reminder, allows our students who are in California, who take the California alternate assessment, the opportunity to get a high school diploma. So the May revise proposed to remove a few words in there, so some just language changes to get rid of the word alternative and pathway from the ed code, and just leave the word diploma. So in addition to this work, some of the language that changed was also to make students eligible who were in grade 10 and higher in the year 2022 and 2023 eligible for the pathway. And in the past, it was just grade 9 students. So that kind of included more students for this opportunity. And again, this diploma, just so everybody understands, is the same exact diploma as any other high school student would get in school districts, but it allows students with disabilities the increased post-high school opportunities that weren't available before. So again, it is the same diploma as all other students. So next we have the Inclusive College Technical Assistance Center that a lot of you might have heard of as the Inclusive College Hub. And just wanted to know that the May revise that came out added a list of activities and more specifics to what this inclusive college program or this hub would look like. that would offer students support to transition from high school into inclusive college settings. And it also added, which is amazing because we need that partnership with our Department of Rehab, field offices to the list of required partnerships, because we can't do it without all our educational partners, including the Department of Rehab. The bill also included up to $500,000 to convene a work group to collect and share best practices for inclusive college programs. So again, I know that right now UC Davis is a program that everybody looks to as one of the model programs. And we're really looking to increase programs such as these throughout the whole state of California. So Northern California all the way down to Southern California, where we have quite an extensive number of students with disabilities. So we're truly looking forward to the work of this program. And currently right now, this is still in the governor's budget. So we're excited to see the work that will come out of here. And on the bottom of the slide, I just wanted to also put a reminder out. Our Part B application, our grant application was due, and if you can remember way back when, I think it was like in October, we had Shiloh Duncan Bessareel. She presented on the outcomes of the indicators for our schools in California. And so you can find more information on here. The website is listed, but we also want to make sure that we're continuing to get feedback from our community. So we're going to next fall, as more data comes in, start doing more roundtables for information, more presentations for parents to truly understand what this data means, and then always want to have parent and community engagement in what this process is. So next slide, please. So some of the special ed bills, and I think last time I was here, we talked about there are about 10 that relate to special education, or they're in conjunction with some of our other divisions that are still kind of working their way through the legislative process. Many of them I've discussed before, but we're still hoping for that outcome on the emotional disability language. So again, that's changing the language from emotional disturbance to emotional disability, to just have people first language when it comes to students with disabilities. There's also a bill I mentioned before, regarding our deaf and hard of hearing population. And as Nancy and Julie presented on LRE, this bill actually talks about the specific needs of students who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deafblind, and making sure that their unique needs are met, and that we have inclusive opportunities for support and for feedback from our experts in the field to make sure they're part of that IEP process. So we'll see. Again, we're waiting for the outcomes of those bills. A few studies. I know that unfortunately the commission didn't get to hear the presentation earlier from West Ed, which was scheduled for yesterday. But we're hoping we can invite them back maybe to our next meeting. But briefly, and I know a lot of people are excited to hear about that. I've got a few phone calls saying, wait, what about the non-public school study? So we're going to hopefully ACSE be able to get them on. But just briefly, the study was an examination, or is an examination, of our non-public schools. And what the A is non-public agencies. So some people will see NPSA. And just as a reminder, our non-public schools are the schools that are the places and the schools that our students might attend if the LEA cannot provide the educational support and services for them. The A that you sometimes see is the non-public agency. And these aren't placements, but they are services that are provided to students. So the study actually is looking at the placements, which are the non-public schools, serving our students in California. So a few areas that the study was looking at was how California compares to other states in serving students in non-public schools. They looked at in-state versus out-of-state placements. Some of our students received their educational programs in other states outside of California. The study looked at the process used by IEP teams to determine these placements. It looked at student outcomes in non-public school placements. We looked at the certification, monitoring, and oversight that California Department of Education is required to do in these schools. And the last thing it looked at is how to improve coordination between California Department of Ed and the Department of Social Services to ensure that the whole child is supported while students are outside their LEAs. So as far as the process, where WestEd, they're the organization that is conducting the study, they're working right now on scheduling focus groups. So they're scheduling focus groups with LEAs, with parent participants, with teachers, etc. And in the coming months, they're going to be doing on-site visits. They're probably actually already almost finished with on-site visits. And they're going to be sending out more information to their focus groups. But as we receive the information in the report, we'll definitely keep everybody informed when they present to the State Board of Education. And then hopefully, like I said, as we can have them come present to the commission. And I believe the final report is due in late August of 2024. So again, something to kind of look at, as this is a really important area that sometimes we don't think about with regards to educating our students in the continuum of placement options. Another bill we talked about before is Senate Bill 154. And again, this one is that people get confused. It sounds very similar to an alternative means of expression. And people get that confused because the words alternative are in both bills. So this bill, and we're actually trying to tweak the name to make it more clear for our community, it provides teachers the opportunity and understanding to discover alternative ways that a student can share their mastery of the standards aligned curriculum. So currently CDE and the state board are reviewing these, they're basically performance tasks. And we are hoping that the math, they're looking at math first, will be completed in May. And they're going to roll out these tasks to our LEAs to pilot them, to see how well they are, how effective they are. And then they're going to basically unpack other areas such as English language arts, science, PE, and then go ahead and get this information out to our LEAs so that teachers, not just special ed teachers, but our gen ed teachers can be trained to look at other ways that our students are showing mastery of a content. So again, we're looking for more information. We're hoping that we can also get WestEd to come in and to present to the board, state board, ACSE, and town halls, just to make sure that this information is getting out. So next slide, please. So I just want to remind everyone that our office in special ed, we have OSEP coming out, the Office of Special Education Programs. They'll be coming to California in 2025 to review our Part B and Part C systems of general supervision provided by CDE. And basically, just so everybody knows, it's a monitoring cycle of about 5 years where OSEP will come out and review our state's monitoring system. And there's several areas listed below that they're specifically looking at. And in addition, OSEP will be reaching out to ACSE and community members as part of their interview process to talk about family engagement and other areas related to the commission's work. So just know that this is coming up and our office is actively preparing for this monitoring visit. And we look forward to the visit to highlight the areas of strength and celebrations, but also to look at our needs of our division and really focus on plan on how to improve outcomes, again, for students with disabilities. And last, I want to highlight some of the work we're continuing to do in our office. If you could go to the next slide, please. And to support our LEAs and throughout the state. So we continue to be involved in advocating and testifying for the needs of our students at the legislative level. This is a really exciting and important aspect of the work we do. We're working hard to select monitoring we're working hard with select LEAs on their monitoring and to support them to improve their outcomes for students with disabilities. So we have a lot of LEAs that really we're targeting in our monitoring system to provide intense support where they might, their SIM process or other areas of improvement might not be going as well as we want. So we have teams who go out to school districts to set goals, to really drill down, is what we call it, some areas of need and help them improve in those areas. We're also working with several grant recipients and contractors to ensure we have a solid system in place to hear our families' concerns through our Office of Administrative Hearings, or we call it OAH process. Like the caller mentioned yesterday, we continue to work internally to create our constituent office and have really already began the process. We've had about 10 to 15 families make the decision to go through an ADR, an alternative dispute resolution process at the state level, and to settle the concerns maybe that are happening between families and LEAs rather quickly and timely and efficiently, and bringing that back to the district level. So we're really excited about this office. Again, I always believe you go slow to go fast. So right now we're happy with the progress, and we're hoping to have this office up and running by September. And again, this is really important for us to have that family engagement, family involvement, family voice, and for us at the state level to work as a facilitator with the districts to settle any concerns that might arise. We continue to work with our early ed partners from CalExE and to ensure our districts are providing services and support to our youngest students with disabilities, and ultimately, again, improving outcomes. This is where it starts, at our earliest levels and our earliest learners. So if you haven't seen, and I'm doing a little plug for the CalExE folks, if you look online, there's more information. They have their next conference coming up in October. We would love to have as many people as we can be aware of, be a part of the work that's happening with our youngest learners. We know that our partners with CCEE and our SELPA are working on a beautiful family student-centered IEP template to be used throughout the state, and that work should be finalized soon. So we're looking forward to that document and have all LEAs and have our teams present in this work and this rollout of this document. One other study I'd like to mention is we're working with our partners called Key to Ed, and they've conducted a study on recommendations for a facilitated IEP process. And again, we have another acronym, an FIEP, if some of you have heard that. And it's really to provide a structured, recommended, facilitated IEP, meaning for some cases that are difficult at the district level. The work really ties into our ADR work that we're also doing at the state level. We've done at the county offices, at the SELPA level and the LEA levels, really to work as a team, as a community, to meet the needs of students and also have that facilitated process. So our Key to Ed folks have been completing a study, which also will be, I believe, completed at the end of this month. And last, we've been partnering, just so you know, with other divisions in CDE to make sure we're not doing this work alone. We cannot do this work in isolation. So we need to ensure, like we had the presentation yesterday from Imperial County SELPA, for our duly identified students who maybe speak another language and have a disability. They're receiving the supports they need. So we're doing a lot of cross-divisional work with our multilingual services division and also our, they call it educational frameworks division. And again, I talked a little briefly about the work from 154, which is the alternative means of expressing understanding of proficiency. And again, that isn't the work that, we're focusing solely on our teachers for special education. We need our general education teachers to understand that this work for universal sign-up learning is their responsibility as well. So we're working with the Curriculum Frameworks Division to ensure that this information goes out to our general ed constituents, our general ed partners, our general ed teachers and classrooms to make sure this work is not in silos. So I just want to thank our divisions for being open to partner in all the work we're doing out of our Division of Special Ed. And last, one thing I did want to mention is we're working with our Early Education Division to update the DRDP, which is our measurement of progress for our earliest learners. So we're making sure that all testing items in this assessment battery are appropriate for students with disabilities. We have voices from experts in the field, including our our students who are deaf, blind, visually impaired, use alternate means of communication, including assistive technology, American Sign Language, just looking at this assessment to make sure that it is appropriate and inclusive of all students, infants, toddlers, preschoolers with disabilities. So that's some of the partnership work we've been doing across the State Department of Education. And last, we've been partnering with our state special schools. I've been working a lot with Nancy lately to ensure that our deaf-blind students are receiving the supports and services they need to be successful, and that people are understanding what least restrictive environment is for some deaf and hard of hearing students. So right now we're working to select a work group that will help update some best practices related to serving students who are deaf and hard of hearing. So last, if you could go to the next slide, please. Some of the best parts of my job, I'm just looking at the picture, it kind of gives me goosebumps, is I got the opportunity to go to CSDR's graduation last week. And I was so excited for the graduates and to see them seeking enrollment in higher ed, four-year institutions, community colleges, trade schools, employment. I mean, it was truly the highlight of my year so far. And what was amazing is that several CDE staff also were in attendance in Riverside, including our state superintendent of schools. Superintendent Thurman was also there and present for the graduation. So I'd finally like to leave you with a quick video clip, which is kind of the why of what we do. I always like to bring it back. And the clip is of Ethan Thomas. He's a student from Diamond Bar High School in Southern California, who's delivering the commencement address for his graduating class. So this clip is not a special education graduation. It's truly what inclusion looks like. And for this, I'd like to thank his high school.
My name is Ethan Thomas.
Thank you. I just want to thank his high school principal, David Hong, and superintendent, Dr. Bob Taylor, for truly moving the needle of inclusion forward. So again, this graduation ceremony is a model for all other districts in our state, and CDE, our special ed division, thanks Diamond Bar and everyone else who's including our students and moving that needle forward. So thank you, technology, for showing the video.
Hello, class of 2024. My name is Ethan Thomas. I have spent 4 years here, and it's been a great time. You might have noticed me talking to myself and making puppet hands during break time or passing period. This is called stemming. When I feel stressed or overwhelmed, my stemming increases, and I won't be able to focus and hear people when they're speaking to me. I wasn't trying to be weird or ignore you. I do these things because I have autism and little things can throw me off, so stemming helps me calm down. The staff here at Diamond Bar High School helped me be successful in more ways than I can count. If it wasn't for their hard work, patience, and dedication, I wouldn't be here ready and excited for the next chapter in my life. Next school year, I'm going to Mount Sac. Some of you might see me there. Remember to say hi. I bet, just by seeing me around campus, some of you thought I couldn't give a commencement speech. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my school and those who believed in me, advocated for me, and finally, those who decided to take a chance on me to stand in front of you and give the speech. Did you know I taught myself how to play Mozart on a keyboard just by looking at the lights on the keys as the keyboard plays by itself? I don't play it like a person who has taken keyboard or piano lessons. I play it my way. That's called different but able. Some of you will someday get a job and have a position where you decide who to hire and not hire. You should decide who to hire based on the person's abilities. If I can give you one piece of advice as you go into the real world and work with people who are different, with different abilities, that would be to judge people by what they're able to do rather than what you see on the outside. Being different doesn't mean being unable to do things. We're all very different from each other, doing things that others might not understand. That doesn't mean we're not normal. There's no such thing as normal. What is normal after all? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and I can see why you got chills just seeing the slide.
Thank you, Ethan.
No, I think it's a great closing comment as we round out our fiscal year here, our year here in terms of a different but my way. I just love that. So I'll open up the floor for any questions and comments from commissioners. Let's see, Commissioner Snipes.
Once again, we're at that point in the meeting where I can't not say something about early childhood. I work with many LEAs across the state who are EAP grant recipients and have been, and they explicitly credit the EAP grant as a major reason why they've been able to increase inclusion and have seen progress on state indicator data, but more importantly, the culture of their schools, because they've received the funding and the opportunities that have been opened for them through receiving that funding. And I just have to say, like, it's so disappointing to see this potentially going away, because this reduction of funding and the pause in increasing the percentage of students, the minimum percentage of students, it's not just like a pause, it's a big step backwards and a backpedal in a commitment that was made to funding early childhood programs and making sure that our kids in our state have the kind of beginning that allows them to have that kind of graduation that we just saw. And so it's really, really important for us in this platform with this voice to advocate for funding like this to be allocated appropriately and to people. If we look at where that funding might go, it's not necessarily being directly allocated to people services. And so I just have to say, I really appreciate hearing that statewide collective voice to keep this funding. And I hope that us as a commission, that we can also join that voice and say it's really important to keep that early funding available. We've seen the increase in students being included, and we've seen what the funding and what the support through the EAP grant can do. And I just really hope that this isn't an end, and I really hope it's not even a pause. So that's what I wanted to say. But I also want to say the DRDP updates look great. Very excited about that. And that new IEP template and the team that's working on it. Oh my gosh. So excited for all of those things. So there's excitement, but there's also just let's fund the right things.
Agreed.
Commissioner Oyakawa.
I agree, and I wondered, that was one thing that really stuck out was, and I didn't know it was called the EAP grant, but yes, early childhood, this is taking us backwards, and we all know this is the foundation of everything else that comes afterwards. And so if you're cutting it at the legs, it's just we're losing that. And so I don't know if this is something that as a commission we're able to express as a group our support for refunding these grants, these programs, I would support that if that's something that we can put on the next agenda. I know we can't vote on anything now, but I think it's so important and it needs to be elevated as much as possible. So that was my question, I guess, on that one. I did have a few questions, Rachel, about the Dr. Heyman, about the SB 154, the alternate pathway. I'm glad that there's language change. I didn't realize that was coming. That helps to clarify, I think, that it is not an alternate diploma, but it really is a diploma. And then we have now created other ways to reach it. Did you say that there was an expansion that for eligibility so that students who were not eligible earlier because they were too old when it started, are they sort of grandfathered in, or is that an expansion of the program? Did I get that right?
Yeah, so let me just back up a little bit just to clarify. So, and this is why we're looking to try to change the names a little bit of the 154, Senate Bill 154, which that was the alternative means for having students express their mastery of content. So that's the work that's being studied right now in the rollout of suggested alternative ways and means for students to understand the standards. The 181 work, which was from I think 22, 23, if I recall, was that alternative pathway to a diploma. So yes, so what the language now said in the May revised was before it was if you were in ninth grade only, right? So it was that cohort class. And then, a lot of the voices from the field said, well, what about 10th grade? What if I was in 10th grade? Do I get the opportunity to go back and take some of these classes to show my mastery of the content? And so our legislators heard that, and they included the 10th grade class as well. So what I'm anticipating is that might reach further than that. So being enrolled in that class is what I'm thinking, because a lot of people say, well, can we grandfather it in? So right now we're waiting to see, so it hasn't passed. The governor hasn't signed it, but the language is there now to include additional students that were not included in the original language of the bill. So that's kind of what it says right now, and we're looking to see how it's going to be finalized.
Great, that's exciting. I hope they can continue to bring in students who just missed it.
Right.
And then I guess I had another question from the last time we talked about alternate, and I guess I was the example now of why we need to change the name since I'm mixing up all the numbers because alternate is the word. The guidance for those students who didn't qualify for the 181, I guess that group, there was that other second group 2 students who were described as getting guidance that was going to come out, I think, at the end of this month. So I'm wondering if that's still slated to come out later this month.
Yes, and I know that they're still kind of finalizing that. So that was some of the work that group from the Senate Bill 154 was doing, was to also include that group 2. So that work really was expanding to not only our students who are taking the California alternative assessment, but also included additional students. So hopefully that pilot work is coming out right now just for math. And so I believe they have another year in that before that actually comes out. So it's they're working hard at getting it all done. And we're hoping to see some of the promising work to include all students when that work is complete.
Right. Great, thank you. And then I was excited to see the facilitated IEP and ADR office getting started, and it sounds like it's off to a good start. So I look forward to hearing updates on that. I think as we want to learn more about how we can help the families work with their districts and getting as much help from the state. I think often I think one of the callers mentioned that yesterday too, as the family is often, we often feel we are not included when things get rolled out. And so finding out information, having it directed to families is actually a great way to support us. And so I know at least our family appreciates those efforts. And then I also just wanted to thank you for the work on the special ed bills for the DHH kids and helping to carve out a different definition, because it can't, at least restrictive environment can mean different things for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And so I appreciate the recognition and the highlight of that to help get better understanding in the field. So thank you for all your work.
Welcome.
Thank you all. And just quick response regarding the EAP funding, IEEP. Want to acknowledge that there have been some outreach and asking ACSE to provide support for the sustaining of this funding. We earlier this year and are kind of setting our priorities and thinking through the legislative cycle, decided not to try and track individual bills, and I include the budget bill in that cycle, given the timing of our meeting. June 13th budget conversations and where they would be, and just recognizing we have a $28 billion deficit in the state, and so the not being able to get up to speed to make informed advice. I wanted us to avoid that as writing bills, because there's a number of difficult decisions being made. I believe our voice and support for equitable and inclusive practices is pretty clear, and I know a number of our partners are also advocating for the continuance of that funding. So just wanted to share that kind of perspective in terms of our involvement in individual decisions that are involved in the budget bill, without being briefed at all on the totality of what's going on, even in the education budget. Just chose not to make that an action item. Should the conversation continue into August, it's something we will certainly monitor, or we can choose to monitor and participate in the future. Okay. So with that, I will wrap up our state partner reports and ask the slide deck for public comments to be shared. I'll ask any members of the public in the room wishing to make a public comment for the previous items or general public comment in general to please call in or line up.
There are no public commenters at the moment, both phone call wise and within the room.
Okay. So I will close items 11 and 12 that we kind of smushed together, and I'll just hold for public comment for any general public comment. Item 13, to see if anyone was calling in for that portion of our agenda. Any callers on the line?
There are none at this time.
All right. With that, I will close public comment. I see the time is 12:06. We missed it by a minute, but I want to thank everyone for your contributions. We landed this meeting. Have a great summer, and we'll see you all in the fall.